Hello, and welcome back to Domestic Violence Education. Once again, I am your host, Wairimo Magua, and today we're going to be looking at domestic violence as a form of systemic abuse. Last episode, we looked at domestic violence statistics and noticed a trend with women being the most common victims of abuse and men being the most common abusers, and we asked ourselves what kind of phenomena or theories could explain this connection between gender and violence. Today, we're going to start investigating this connection by looking at domestic violence as a systemic method of control through historical and legal perspectives. To begin this video, let's start by breaking down this claim. By identifying domestic abuse as a systemic method of control, we are saying that it is a tool built into a system to carry out a specific purpose. With a historical and legal perspective, we identify past laws as the network through which the tool operates. Similarly to how a school is a system with ingrained rules or tools, such as a principal, who operates through networks such as the school's administration or management. With this in mind, and this project's focus on the US, we can identify the system that domestic abuse is a part of as patriarchy. To begin understanding this viewpoint, we have to acknowledge that America is a country built on the white male supremacist ideologies of its founders. This means that our legal systems have historically been structured in a way to provide resources in excess to white, hetero, male, able-bodied figures while oppressing people who do not fit that ideal. For such a system to be maintained, some forms of oppression or some tools must exist to keep the subjugated groups controlled so that the privileged groups can continue to benefit from their oppression. But what laws existed that could have enabled domestic abuse? And how do they contribute to domestic abuse today? Well, let's take a look. Starting with physical abuse, prior to its independence, the American colonies followed British laws. According to then politician Sir William Blackstone, in the late 1700s, husbands were allowed to beat their wives for corrective purposes. After America gained independence, wife beating was further endorsed by a Mississippi Supreme Court ruling in 1824 that a husband could administer moderate punishment to his wife during emergencies. It wasn't until 1871 when the first state removed husbands' rights to beat their wives. It took another decade for the first state to make wife beating illegal. Another form of abuse laws enabled was financial. Prior to the mid-1800s, women were impacted by a common law called coverture, where they had no legal identity outside of the man to whom they belonged. This meant women could not own or purchase property, sign contracts, or initiate divorce. Women would belong to their fathers and be transferred to their husbands after marriage. Any property or valuables from the woman's side of the family would become the husband's assets. Even in the case of widows, for many years, the deceased assets would go to the next male inheritor, either on the husband's side of the family or the wife's son. Without control over their finances, women were highly susceptible to financial abuse, as they had to depend on their fathers or husbands for survival or be at the mercy of other family members. Additionally, the lack of legal identity contributed to the objectification and psychological abuse of women, with daughters and wives being viewed as property instead of people, and legally lacking the autonomy to show otherwise. This lack of legal autonomy also contributed to the final form of legal abuse we will discuss, which was sexual abuse. Even after women gained legal identities, socially they were viewed as the property of their husbands. As property, their desires in regards to sex were not considered, since they were not viewed as people. Because of this, until the late 1970s, all states had marital exemptions when it came to rape. It wasn't until 1993 that all states criminalized marital rape. From statutory to common law, we've gone over ways that the legal system has explicitly or implicitly encouraged domestic violence against women, oppressing this group to the benefit of the privileged group, which in this case would be men. And although these laws have changed over time, their influence on society has lingered. For example, although women have their own legal identity, work, and own property, we see social trends where women are still expected to take their husband's last name if married, still perform the majority of household labor, and are still expected to be financially dependent on their partner, or else they may emasculate him by being the breadwinner. We see that legal history has influenced the culture surrounding violence and gender. Next episode, we will discuss the more specific cultural expectations of men and women and their relation to violence and how media has contributed to that relationship. Until then, thank you for watching and learning with us, and we'll see you in the next video.